The following program is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministries.
Let me just begin. I'm going to read from Proverbs 27 in a moment. But I'm going to begin with a question, and the question is, are you living your best life? To every one of us, are we living our best life? And by best life, I mean, especially for those of us who are believers, Jesus said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly, to the full, overflowing. In the life that you are living, are you living to the full? Are you getting the best out of you? The best out of what God has given to you, the best out of relationships? Are you giving the best to the world? Could life for you be better? And I would argue that if we're honest, all of us would have to answer, we are not living our best lives, and there's room for improvement. And I want to say to you tonight that a better life is possible, and you don't need anything other than what you already got to live it. And the only thing standing between you and your best life is what's between your ears, what's in your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Change the way you think, and your thinking will change your behavior, and then you will get a different outcome. Amen? And so let me read this passage to you, Proverbs 27, and I want to begin reading at verse 23. It says, be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. For riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? The hay appeareth, and the tender grass showeth itself, and herbs of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of the field. And thou shalt have goats' milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance of thy maidens. You may be seated. Now, for most of us, that just didn't make any sense, but I'm going to make some sense for you. And the subject of the sermon tonight, managing what you have to get what you need. Managing what you have to get what you need. And I'm going to suggest what you need is to be the best. There's some of us in here who've been talking the wrong talk. The wrong words have been coming out of your mouth. And because the wrong words have been coming out of your mouth, you've not been able to accomplish those things that God has destined for you to have. You have not had your best life because of what's coming out of your mouth. And what's coming out of your mouth is because of what's in your head. And I don't mean that you've been cursing, even though some of you have been cursing. But this is the kind of talk that's been coming out of your mouth that's getting in your way. I don't have. In so many situations, you have failed to do, failed to try, failed to accomplish because you said you don't have. I don't do this because I don't have, and you put whatever it is you said you don't have behind it. But you say, Pastor, I don't have it. I say you do have it. You've said, I can't do that. And I'm saying that's the wrong thing to come out of your mouth. But Pastor, I'm just being realistic. Realistic according to who? It wasn't realistic for Peter to get out the boat and walk on water. It all depends on whose reality you're talking about. You've talked about stuff like, well, you know, I'm poor. Or, you know, I didn't come from that kind of family. Or, you know, if I had what they had. Or I don't have the education. I don't have the job. I don't have the money. I don't. And then some of you have gone so far to say you don't want it. That you don't want the best life that you can have. And some of us go to churches where preachers condemn living a better life. But I want you to know you're not in that kind of church. And I am not a name it, claim it preacher. But I'm a preacher who believes what the Word of God says, and that is that we can have the best life. And the best life for you looks different than it does for me, but God has given each one of us a course to run, and on that course, it is our best life. And here's the last thing I want to say that some of us said, and there's some other things, and then I'm going to walk through this text, and I'm going to show you something after I walk through it. Some of us have said stuff like, you want God to do it all. And can I tell you, God is not going to do it all? That you are in a partnership with God. And you and God together can do anything. And so when I said a moment ago, when you say you don't have, see, when you're in partnership with him, you have what he has. When you're in partnership with him, you can do what he can do. It's like your credit tore up. But if you hook up with somebody who got perfect credit or good credit and they co-sign for you, you get stuff on their name. Stuff you couldn't get in your name, you get it because they co-sign. Well, when you partner with God, he becomes your co-signer. And I tell you, he's never been turned down for credit. Let me go through this mumbo jumbo that I just read. He says, be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herd. This is wisdom being given to people who are responsible for living their best life. And what God says to them, that in order to get what you need to have to live your best life, you got to manage well what you have. Be thou diligent. Diligent means to give attention to give focus to work hard at, to look after. Give diligent to know the state of thy flocks. Here's a man who has a herd of sheep. And so he says, be diligent, pay attention to, focus on, work hard at knowing the condition of your flock. Plain and simple. One, know how many you got. Two, know the condition or the shape of every single sheep in your herd. Because at some point, the sheep that you have are going to translate into getting the life that you want. The currency for your best life is in your herd. But you can't maximize what the potential in the herd if you don't know, one, what you got. And then if you don't know what shape they're in, you can't maximize it because you do for them depending upon their condition. If you got one that's underweight, then you pay attention to that and you know that you need to get him up to par. If you got one that's overweight, then you know you got to feed him less so he can lose some weight. If you got one just right, all you got to do is maintain. You got one that's crippled, you need to work on him. You got one that's blind, you need to work on him. You got to know what you got, and you got to know the condition that they're in. And that phrase there, and look well to thy herds, and that means some translate and feed them. And the idea of feeding is more than food, but take good care of them. Why do you want to take good care of them? Because eventually you're going to do one or two things with them. You're going to take them to market to sell them, or they're going to provide wool for you to sell or make clothes. And you want to make sure that you're doing your best to take care of what you have. Because again, that's the currency for your best life. And here's part of the rationale. For riches don't last forever. Two principles here. One is, I need you to take care of what you got, because there's no guarantee that what you got will be here. And it doesn't mean the same thing for us, but flocks and herds in that day, that was their financial resources. That was the way these folk made a living. And so he's saying that there's no guarantee that, one, it will last. And then the second thing is, if it's going to last, you got to keep doing what you need to do to nurture it so that it grows. Because how many of you know, even if you got it, but you keep taking out, sooner or later you ain't going to help. And so you got to do what you need to do to grow what you got. And you can't grow it, sustain it, when you don't know what you got in the first place. And when you're not taking care of it. And so, and I'm going to say something in a minute, and I'm taking my time through it because you're going to say I'm crazy, but I need you to know that I'm really not. And then he says, and the riches don't endure from generation, or the crown don't go from generation to generation. This is what he's saying. Part of our responsibility, part of the way we build the best life, is to position the generation behind us better than we were. And I don't mean by giving them more stuff to make life better, but positioning them so that they can add value to whatever we pass along and have a better life, not because we're buying them stuff, but because they are able to produce more. That means I want to grow, for example, my business so that I can pass it to the children. And when I pass it to them, they're ready for it, and they can make it bigger and better. And then the next generation that get it is going to get bigger and better. And then this is what he says happens. Because after a while, the hay will appear. And this has to do again with farming. And the tender grass will show itself, and the herbs on the mountain will be gathered. So after a while, the harvest is going to come. And so, and the implication there is, not only have you taken care of the flock, but you're taking care of the harvest. And so now it's time to do some transaction. The lambs, again, will be wool for you, for your clothing. And again, you can sell some. And then you got the goats. And you can sell some goats and buy you some more fields. And you also can have the goats, and then you can get milk, and you got enough food because of what you made off your flock, off your fields. You can feed your family. And see that little last line, and maintenance for thy maids or maidens. That means you got some servants. You got people working for you. But you got enough to take care of them. But here's the principle. If you manage your herd, then the herd will provide a living for you and for the next generation, and for those that are in your employ, you can take care of them too. Pastor Simmons, what does all of that have to do with us in this New Year's night? I'm going to tell you in a minute. But let me tell you this first. When I was in junior high school, I was sitting on the porch in Valdosta, Georgia, with my granddaddy, Elder William Henry Norwood, and he would always ask us questions for us to wrestle with. And he said to me, if you take care of your field will take care of you. What am I talking about? And in middle school, I couldn't figure that out. He didn't tell me the answer. And when I went back the next year for Christmas to get my peppermint candy and orange in a bag, I had to tell him that I knew the answer. And now, and even before he died, I was able to share with him the answer. But that's all this text is about. Taking care of your field, and it will take care of you. Managing what you have to get what you need. Let me tell you the first principle I want you to take out of this for the new year. I want to say to you that if you invest in you a notebook, this just happened to be this type. I don't care if it's a wire-bound tablet. If you invest in your notebook and get you a pencil, and if you don't have a pencil, I'll give you this one right here. But if you will get you a book and do what this text says, what I promise you, if you do it right, you can get where you need to be and have the best life that you can possibly have. I told you this is not a regular sermon, so let me give you the steps so you can write this down and do it. Some of you may have already done this. I did it already, and I've been doing it, and so I'm preaching this principle that started with my granddaddy that's in this text, and I know other people that do it, and I'm going to share a testimony with you from a person that does what I'm telling you right now, and see if it won't bless your life. Step number one, get along with God and pray about your future. Get along with God and pray about 2017 and beyond, but in particular, ask him to order your steps for 2017. And after praying and seeking God's face, this is where you begin. And for the young folk, let me tell you this way. If I am going to use my GPS, I program in here, take me to Preston, Georgia, to Mom's Kitchen. And what's going to pop up when I put Preston, Georgia in there is this. Google Map is requesting to access your location. Because I got the location off because I don't want people knowing where I am. And so I got my location off. And so I says, okay, while it is giving me directions to Mom's Kitchen. And then once I grant access to the location, it can calculate the direction to Mom's Kitchen in Preston, Georgia. The text says, take heed to your flock. Look well after you heard. And here's what it's saying. You cannot get where you want to go unless you know your current location. And so here's the next step. Sit down and write down what you have and the condition of what you have. Because you want to go somewhere, but you need to know what you have because you got to manage what you have. And you can't manage it again if you don't even know you got it. And the problem is, some of us say we ain't got nothing, but you got more than you realize. One of the most valuable things that you need are relationships. And if you claim all your Facebook friends as relationships, you messed up. You just don't know better. You don't have that many friends. And so I am talking about, and you know me, so here's my principle. You speak and you talk to everybody, anybody. If I come to your house and you got a dog in the yard, I'm going to say good morning to your dog. And the cat. You treat everybody right. But once you've been before God and you have some sense of where it is that God wants to take you, you need some strategic relationships in your life because you won't get anywhere without relationships. And so you need to take and write the relationships down. And those strategic relationships are relationships, I call them 360 degree, some above, some are your peers, and then some beneath. Because here's what has to happen for this thing to work. The relationships, you got to have somebody that pour into you. Because if you are pouring out and nobody pouring into you, you're going to be drained and you're going to be through. And then you need people who are your peers. And the Bible says iron sharpens iron. And so you work to make each other better. And then you need some people, and I don't use this literally, but you need some people who are not where you are that you can pour into them to help bring them up. And this thing go full circle. And so you look and strategically make sure that you got some people to pour into you, some peers to sharpen you, and somebody for you to pour into. I hope you're writing this down because you won't remember it next week. And you see, another reason for the circle, you reap what you sow. And if your hand is out and you're just begging and not pouring into somebody else, this won't work. And strategic. And again, this is not about using people, because you're going to position yourself so that you are in a resource for another person in a relationship as well. And so I'm not talking about using people, but strategically for people, finding people to help you be the best you can be. So for example, as a pastor, I want to be the best pastor that I can be. And so I want to find pastors who can help me become better. But I also want to be the best man that I can be. So I found me some men who, in my perception, are already greater at being a man than I am. And so I want them to be able to pour into me to help me be a better man, to help me be a better father. I want some peers so that we can sharpen each other. And I want somebody to work. And so all the resources, I need somebody to help me manage my money. I need somebody to help me manage my time. I'm crazy sometimes. I need somebody just to check me. And then here is, for the people of Mount Zion, back in 2004, I preached a sermon to you about the kind of people you need in your life. And I introduced this term you call hinge, H-I-N-G-E people. Hinges are on the door, and hinge people open doors. So you need some hinge people who can get you in places where you need to go, who can open doors that won't open for you. You need to be a phone call away from any person or any resource you need, and you get there through hinge people. If you need a judge tonight, you need a hinge person. If you don't know the judge yourself, you need a person in your circle that you can call and say, hey, I need to talk to the judge tonight. And they say, give me a minute, I'll have him call you. If you need not the loan officer, but the president of the bank to talk to, you need you a hinge person to say, hey, I don't need to talk to the loan officer. I need the CEO of the bank to call me. I don't need no middle folk. Give me a minute. I'll have them call you. And so you take inventory and you do that. And so you go down the relationships, your resources. How much money you got? Who you owe? Where is it? And see, and you don't even know what you got, so it's real hard for you to even work with what you got. But every year, at the end of every year, you ought to sit down and pick up all you have, and because you can't get where you want to go financially unless you know what you got. And so write it down. Every resource, financial, whatever it is, write it down. Because you got to know where you ought to get where you're going. And God is, and you're praying to God. And so the relationships, the resources, and your responsibilities. Who and what are you responsible for? Write it all down. What's the condition of it? On your job, what are you responsible for? How are you managing? You got a family, if you're a parent, you're responsible for your children. What's the state of your children? Where is it that you're trying to get your children? Are you doing what you need to help them get there? If you want your children, for example, to excel in the classroom, then you got to know the state. How much time are they spending watching television, and how much time are they spending reading? How much time are they spending playing video games, and how much time are they doing expanding their mind through research literature? Instead of buying $200 shoes, are you taking them to the museum? Are you exposing them to other cultures and other things? Because you're not going to get what you want out of them if you want the best life if all you're doing is playing with them. And investing your resources in stuff to entertain them instead of educating them. So y'all, it wasn't a traditional kind of sermon, and so I got just a few, and so you write it down. So you know what you got, you know where you are. And again, you're in much better shape than you think you are. And then you pray and you ask God, how do I move now from where I am? How do I nurture the relationships to get where I need to be the next 12 months? Because I want to be in a better place than I am now. How do I manage my resources so that I can be in a better place than I am now in 12 months? And how do I be more responsible in these areas where I am supposed to be responsible and be in a better place than I am now? And let me drop this on you because this is the biggest thing. The biggest thing, the biggest issue here in terms of being diligent over the herd and over the flock and managing what you have is to manage the person that's in your seat. Because the person in your seat has more to do with where you are than anybody else. If I were in the ditch tonight, I couldn't blame Diane. You know, oh, well, if I just had, my wife. I can't blame my wife because I have a choice to respond to whatever happens to me. I can't blame the man, whoever that is. I can't blame anybody because I have a choice to respond to how you treat me. I can let you keep me down or I can get up. I can make a choice to stay in the gutter with you or I can make a choice to do something different. And so the person I have to manage is me. Your resources don't have a mind of their own. Your money will do whatever you make it do. Your relationships can work for you. They are based on what you put in them and who you connect with. And so the first thing you got to do is begin to manage yourself so that you can be different. Grow yourself. How many of you taller than you were last year? And let me tell you, see, you got to grow you. What are you doing to grow you? How many books you read this year? How many podcasts you listened to this year? How many presentations on whatever area you was trying to grow? How often do you listen to stuff other than Tom Joyner in the morning and Nephew Tommy? You ain't growing doing it. And if all you do is keep your face in Facebook, the only body benefiting from that is the people like Mark Zuckerberg who getting rich off of you being nosy.